to be seen over and over again, making commercial platforms more usable. Call 866-224-5422. Toll free 866-224-5422. AMP2.TV, the first and only internet television network that's truly plugged in. 866-224-5422. That's AMP2.TV. The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. It's Monday night at 9. Time for Sex Talk with Dr. Richard Siegal, a certified sex therapist and sexuality educator. Dr. Siegal is here to answer all your questions about sex and sexuality that you might not have known who to ask. He'll also welcome special guests to talk about a wide variety of topics within the fascinating world of sexuality. So, welcome to Sex Talk.
Good evening. It's Monday night, and it's time for Sex Talk. I'm Ricky Siegal with my brother, as always, Larry Siegal.
Hello.
Well, with my brother.
Well, I'm always your brother.
You're always my brother. It didn't come out right. But my partner in crime, my go-to guy, my advisor, my inspiration. I don't want to start corny, but I'm in this field because of you. And just let me express gratitude before we get started. We are on WNN in Boca Raton and in South Florida. You can listen, if you're listening on the radio, or on 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. Or we're also broadcasting live on Facebook. Hopefully some of our friends are watching. Please feel free to call in. We'd love to hear your questions because this is Sex Talk and we talk about sex. So you can call in at 888-565-1470. One more time, if you want to jot that down, 888-565-1470. So we ran out of time last week, as it seems we do every week. This is the quickest half hour I've ever experienced, but it's we get to talk about what we love to talk about the most.
Yes.
And last week we were talking about sexual pleasuring and the keys to that. And, of course, I want to stay on that topic because it seems all we hear about all the time, every day, is just the opposite.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's so easy to go right to that kind of dark side
what happened today?
Of sex. Who literally got screwed and who got who got nailed, and I mean all those kind of things. What's wrong? Who got busted with what? So it's really kind of rare, I think, to have an opportunity to talk about sexual pleasure.
And nothing else.
And nothing else.
No danger,
Right.
and no risk, and no lawsuits, and no witch hunts, and
just the feel-good stuff.
Because it doesn't get, crazy as it is, it doesn't get addressed enough in the broad field of sexuality.
No, I mean, we talked about that last week, how, so much of sexuality education is completely devoid
Gloom and doom.
Of pleasure. Right. It really is all about
teach,
avoiding these negative things, not gaining anything positive.
Right. We should call it sexual consequences education.
Yeah, and that's basically what most of it is.
Instead of sexual pleasure education.
Right. Don't get somebody pregnant. Don't get pregnant.
A disease.
Don't get a disease. And in school, then, go raise a sack of flour.
Oh, yeah. Remember those? Nobody's still using empathy bellies or walking around with eggs and stuff.
I mean, once in a while you'll see an after-school program, but...
like that's what kids need to know about sex, how to take care of the baby they're going to have someday. Or the baby they'll probably have if they don't listen and keep it in their pants, like good little...
Again, I know we're starting off with the rant, and we're not going, but we've talked about this for a long time. Well, let me just say this one thing, because this is this contextual thing, and the point that you just made, that why is it okay that even in a school, I forget the politics of all of that, but even in a school, why is it okay to give information to adolescent girls in particular about where they can dump a baby if they find themselves with an unintended pregnancy, have it, and then go dump it at a firehouse or some other kind of service place. Why is that okay, but to come in and talk about how to feel good and not, set yourself up for negative consequences, why is that so taboo?
Yeah. Right. Remember, like even 25 years ago when we did that work with the Teen Pregnancy Prevention Coalition, and people would talk about having panels in schools with teen parents talking about how their lives went off the rails and how difficult. And I remember this conversation even back then. What if we had a panel of kids on stage at an assembly in a high school talking about being sexually active and never having gotten pregnant, caused a pregnancy, never having contracted an STD, and how they learned about pleasure? We'd get run out of town. That would never be allowed to happen.
Right. And
Why?
I remember it being asked by, as a matter of fact, it was an event that I was facilitating a discussion after a play about
a
teen
talk
sexuality,
back, right?
a talk back, exactly. And, you know, this one girl, you know, sort of, I mean, I really felt put in my place, even though it wasn't directed at me. But the question of this 15-year-old girl, why is it that all of you talk about even adolescent pregnancy like it's some sort of disease?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
like
I
on
didn't
South
tell her. I
Park,
said, you're right.
The worst disease boys can give you of all, pregnancy.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right. So there's enough out there of that fire and brimstone, that doom and gloom, that, you know, pleasure phobia.
Right.
Right? Which is, again, kind of our legacy. That's part of our Puritan root. Right? That pleasure phobia, that erotophobia. So let's break that chain.
Yeah.
Right? Let's you know, pleasure's a wonderful thing. Right? I know it's one of those things that shouldn't have to be said, but we kind of have to say it.
It's so ironic. I mean, if our bodies are not wired for anything, they're wired for pleasure.
Right.
And self-preservation, sure, but we're pleasure-seeking animals.
Yeah,
and
we are.
We're not allowed to talk about that.
We are
That's-
hedonistic in our
That's
essence.
ironic.
Right.
So when we ran out of time last week, we were at that point where we wanted to talk about those 4 elements that
Yes.
you had identified. And let's see if we can remember what they are.
Okay.
Communication.
Communication, a big one.
Location.
That's right.
Exploration.
And experimentation, right?
Experimentation. Communication. Did we say that?
I think so. It's always worth saying again.
Sure. Those are
Right.
the elements.
Right. So again, the positions was the other one.
Yeah.
Right. So we have positions,
Right.
location, communication, and exploration, experimentation. Right. These, if people can just focus on these 4 things, the amount of pleasure and eroticism that they can generate is probably beyond most people's imagination.
Yeah. Like I was saying last week, we got to take the work out of sex.
Yes.
And get people to remember
Back
that
into
it's sex
play.
play.
Right.
It's fun. It's supposed to be. Right?
Right.
People
And see,
aren't
that's a
supposed to be
key,
in
too.
their
It
heads.
is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, there's the reproductive element, but it is also supposed to be pleasurable. Right? One of my favorite moments in my career is sort of when I was invited to be on a panel that ended up being me on one side and 3 priests on the other. And it kind of ended up being game, set, and match. We were talking about if it's not about pleasure, if we are not supposed to enjoy it, then there's 2 things we have to ask. Why do women not get pregnant every time?
Right.
And why did God invent a clitoris?
Exactly.
If it's not supposed to be pleasurable, why is that little thing there?
That much bigger thing than most people think, actually.
That's
Yeah,
actually true.
and-
And look at the crura and the roots.
Sure.
But what is the only biological function of a clitoris?
Pleasure.
That's it.
No
That's
reproductive function.
that's a
no
pretty cool thing to have.
urinary function.
None.
Right.
None.
It's
Just
been said,
pleasure.
and I don't know by whom, but it's been repeated a million times, that the penis is a multi-purpose tool in that it recreates and urinates and procreates,
Exactly.
but not the clitoris.
No.
Only pleasure. People actually get upset at this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is odd. And
It really is.
it's a good thing to bring up in the point of position, because it's amazing how few people know how inefficient intercourse is
Right.
for pleasuring most women.
Right. And that whatever pleasure is derived, right? Again, if we're talking about heterosexual couples, whatever pleasure is derived from that, it's not just what happens? It's got to be created. There are things that people can do. One of the things I absolutely love about this job, I've been saying for years, that aside from the fact we can guarantee people, cures and solutions, the fact that no matter how good somebody's sexual relationships are, no matter how great their feelings already are, they could already be having the most pleasurable, erotic sex that anybody has ever had in the history of sex, we can still make it better. There is no end to how good this can be. But that's also scary to a lot of people.
I was just going to say, it scares me. This image of, do you remember when Elmer Fudd would try and shoot bugs in the face with a shotgun, but he'd stick his fingers in the barrels of the shotgun, so it would just kind of peel back I get scary images of that happening.
There is some implosion.
I wonder if there's such a thing as really too much.
But too much pleasure?
Too much pressure, too much...
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Too much pressure? Yeah, we go, ow.
Yeah, injury.
Yeah, exactly. So that's part of the wiring too. Yeah. So that's something that people really shouldn't have to be afraid of, because that is something that comes up. The what if. What if I go too far? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? I think most people are afraid. What if I like it too much?
I hear that a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And what is that fear based on?
Addiction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Women are still afraid that if they use sex toys or vibrators, that they can get addicted to them and can't function without them. Mm-hmm. Even, we've talked about it in a different context, but viewing erotic material and porn, as we call it, as a pleasure enhancement tool. There's just a tremendous amount of fear around that nowadays. Right. And, guys are even making up nonsense diagnoses of, remember, if it's got an acronym, it must be a real disease, right? PIED. Porn-induced erectile dysfunction. These guys claim that they cannot even respond without porn, which I always call shenanigans on.
Sure. Right. And again, just because somebody says it doesn't mean it's legitimate.
Well, it could be their experience, but something's got to change.
Well, that's what I mean. Exactly. Right? And is it really the porn?
Yeah.
Or is it the other things that they set themselves up with? And again, we often talk about symptom versus problem versus disease. Mm-hmm. That a lot of these things that are made primary diseases are really symptoms of other things.
Sure. It's always about the symptom rather than calling it a disease.
Right.
But I think that's another good example there, because usually if it's being, if it's a solo endeavor, then what do we got? Nothing but pleasure and no pressure. No anxiety, no performance worries, no partner worries, and that's where people get out of pleasure. They're so fixated on doing it right, especially guys.
Right.
I think we might have talked about this before, but the sexist cliches that women think that guys are all horny and thinking, always pushing for every opportunity. And while that may be true for a lot of guys, just about every guy, there's always a little element of as soon as there's a yes. Yes, we can have sex. There's goody, but
Right.
We're
exactly.
on.
It's right. Yeah, exactly that way. Now let's start off with something that may be helpful to everybody. Right? I think one of the things that most, if not all people, can benefit from, one of the slightest little adjustments that people can make to enhance their pleasure is stop focusing on orgasm.
Yeah.
Stop making orgasm the goal. If we take the performance aspect out of it, if we stop making sex such a goal-directed behavior, then people can be free to just enjoy the pleasure that they're experiencing. But they deny themselves that experience because it's about reaching a goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think first and foremost, stop worrying about orgasm. I refer to orgasm more often than not as a really wonderful side effect, not the goal.
Exactly. That whole idea of women who struggle to orgasm. What's the theme always? Surrender.
Right.
You can't force yourself to orgasm. You have to let go and allow it to happen. Very, very parallel to falling asleep. Right? That's the expression
That's
we
exactly
use.
right.
You don't force you can't get into bed and go, I'm going to, right? You have to be able to let go.
Right.
And allow yourself to.
Yep.
even that sensation can be.
Well, it could be anxiety
jarring.
producing,
Yeah.
and again, a lot of women, and I find a parallel.
That's another
You've
fear,
heard me
by
talk
the way.
about this,
If I let go, I won't be able to come back.
right? Which is, if you're an infant, I kind of understand. I really think that's why a lot of infants are just completely resistant to going to sleep, because while they may not understand it, but there is that sense of they're disappearing into some void, and that just almost inherently comes with this wonder if I'm going to come back. But there's a parallel that a lot of women in particular experience, that a lot of the reasons why some of these women cannot have orgasm, you'll also find are the same reasons why they have trouble sleeping. Right? And it comes down to that idea of surrender, that letting go.
Yeah.
Again, the term falling asleep, like you said, is falling into the blackness, right? And allowing yourself to do that, to give in. But there's a lot of times, just like a lot of women at the point of orgasm, as they're about to sort of make that fall, something snaps back.
And cuts it off.
And not only cuts it off, but now there's a little adrenaline squirt, and now they have like anxiety.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to be erotic after that. Right? So there's a lot of those parallels. So if we take away that pressure, right, take away the fear of whether you're doing it right, whether you are accomplishing the goal or not, and just let's allow ourselves to just be, just to experience this moment and what we're feeling in this moment. And for a lot of people, there's great discovery in that as well. Not just feeling, there's great discovery.
Well, very often I'll tell couples, to use a football analogy, where there's no end zones now. You're just going to run around the field and play. That's our goal for the next few weeks. We're just running around the field. There's no scoring.
Right.
There's no goal.
And every down's a first down.
Right. New play, being creative. Even when couples come in with a real dysfunction, and the therapy helps them to resolve that, I and a lot of sex therapists find it really helpful to keep a couple at that place, before, like very often you'll take intercourse off the table,
right.
You know this, to kind of reboot and start from scratch and help a couple. It's amazing how many people, like I think I mentioned this last week, can have intercourse but can't lie together intimately. That's more intimate, just being still or touching one another intimately but non-sexually. That freaks them out more than turning off all the lights and having intercourse.
But again, that's that long-standing irony that people cannot talk about with the lights on what they have no problem doing in the dark.
And that robs people of that so much potential for that pleasure, for enjoying that time together, for being in that place, not just and this goes to location, not just literally where you are, but a kind of figurative space, an erotic space that a couple enters into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So for both, literally and figuratively, literally, get out of the bedroom once in a while.
Yeah.
Right? How come sex has to be in bed, in the bedroom all the time? Especially as couples age or if couples have kids and the kids are aging and they're not around anymore. A lot of couples find that very freeing, like when the kids go off to college and they can have sex on the couch or on the kitchen table or on the patio in the backyard, anywhere, to mix it up.
And it doesn't, again, even with kids there, right? I used to love, recommending to couples. First of all, think about what was it that was really getting them going? What was the really kind of, sexy and erotic stuff in the very beginning? Do you remember, what it was like making out in the back seat of the car? Well, why can't you? Your car's in the driveway. Your kids are in bed.
Go out in the car.
Back, go in the car. Go make out in the car.
Yeah.
Go to a drive-in movie.
Make another baby.
Do some of those, kinds of things that, people were were used to, and a lot of that was lost. Because I think what we've seen is a shift, sort of that switching, the flip, as it were, that we used to want to get to know somebody to see if we wanted to have sex with them.
Right.
Now people are doing it the opposite. They're going to have sex with them to see if they want to get to know them.
Right.
And I think that has an impact on people's experience of pleasure in that sexual context.
Ironic. Yeah. They're resistant, hesitant to experience too much pleasure with someone they don't know that well yet during intercourse.
Right.
That's a little crazy.
And how did adolescent girls develop this prostitute mentality that they'll put anything in their mouth except touch somebody else's lips because that's too intimate.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So anything else can go in any other part of their body, but no kissing because that's intimate. And I think that does relate to a pleasure phobia as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people are just focused, genital acts and do it and get it done.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole world of eroticism in a kiss.
Sure.
There are few things that can light somebody up more than a really good kiss. There are a few things that can shut somebody down more than a bad kiss. But I mean, this is powerfully erotic. This is such a seat of pleasure that's, again, overlooked too often.
Yeah.
Right? So, when you're talking about the location, getting out there. Right?
Staycations are always a good recommendation.
Absolutely.
You don't have to go away. You could go to the Motel 6 right down the block.
Right. Right. Because is it really about being somewhere, or is it just about being in that place that the two of you are together?
Yeah, and novelty is sexy.
Yeah.
Right? Change it, even just changing scenery.
Absolutely.
So location and creativity with position.
Yeah.
Speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Let's
I want to go off that one too quick, because when we talk about positioning, I think there's a lot of things that people can really think about and benefit that can be gained from understanding positioning. Not just about pleasure, but there is the utility of orgasm, the sense of control, sense of safety. All of these things can be tied in to position.
Sure.
Right. So, do we need to, just continue to do the same thing that people have always done? Right. Missionary position, which again, if we think about where that came from, even that whole idea, and the majority of women in heterosexual sex don't enjoy that so much.
Again, angles and what's being stimulated and it's inefficient. What if you have a couple, a woman that weighs 118 pounds and she's married to a football player who's 6'3" and weighs 220 pounds? How fun is? How about breathing?
Yeah.
Right. You got to be able to. This rigid conservative idea that sex has to be in this position or a man has to be on top. All of this nonsense.
And physiologically, why is that not so enjoyable for most women?
What do you mean? Angles?
Well, I mean, where are most of the nerve endings? Where's most of the sensation?
Well, sure, near the opening, the introitus, the outside parts, the vulva.
Further into the vagina, the fewer nerve endings and sensations there are. So that's not really, again, Freud and people in the past have always talked about that missionary, the man on top, as the only mature
You're right.
Type of sex, and women should be able to have orgasms
about
from that.
Mature orgasms, like there's such a thing as a clitoral orgasm versus a vaginal orgasm versus an anal orgasm. It's all nonsense. It's all coming from the same place. It's all about the clitoris, and the differences are, up to a woman, ideally, to be able to communicate what she likes, what feels good, and a couple to be willing to experiment and play and try different things in different positions and find out what works best for them.
And don't want it to seem like, we talk about positions only from a woman's perspective, where, I mean, that really is important. But guys also need to realize that you can last longer if you change positions a few times.
Absolutely.
And that's, that's never a bad thing.
Or it's a problem when guys, the diagnosis of delayed ejaculation also happens when guys are in their head going, oh, my God, this is taking too long. Why isn't it happening? And again, the trick is just stop, change position, do something different. And, it's really quite simple.
And that, along with that sense of mindfulness, right? Being able to recognize those feelings, especially for guys. Because let's face it, guys, for the most part, have two sensations, especially related to orgasm. There is the sense that they are going to, and then they do.
Right.
right? So if we learn to recognize that much, much earlier, be really aware of what's happening in our bodies, we can really work that a lot better. Right? Manipulate those feelings and sensations. Let it build, let it rise, and get to a certain point where change it a little bit or let it come back down.
Sure.
Right? There's that sense of edging.
Exactly. What most guys do when they're by themselves anyway. If they would do more often in partnered sex, they would enjoy it a lot more too.
Right. And a lot of women, I think, do this naturally as well. There's that sense of bringing themselves close to orgasm, then pulling it back.
Right.
Bringing them close, then pulling it back. And if people did that a few times, when they do let themselves go, it's much more intense, it's much more pleasurable.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right.
And it doesn't take a whole lot. You know, these are simple techniques.
We are going to have to just continue next week because it's happened again.
Are you kidding me?
No. But there was something else I wanted to add. Oh, there they are, right? We have positions, location, communication, experimentation, and I'm excited. We have some plans for the next couple weeks of shows. Not quite sure who's going to be when, but we're expecting some interesting guests. And I wanted to add to this list a fifth element, and that is adaptation and ways that pleasure can be enhanced in different circumstances. One very obvious one that we can talk about next week is sex during pregnancy. And definitely need a whole half hour on that one because it just, nothing drives me crazier, nothing is sadder to me than a couple who, through a loving act, through a sexual act, conceive a child, and then their sex life stops, and they kind of turn into their parents, and all of these unwritten rules about what happens to sex.
Right, and that they're not supposed to, and that somehow it's dangerous for the fetus.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's the necessary
many
adaptation, and there are, again, positions and techniques and things like that during pregnancy.
Yeah.
But we also want to talk about adaptation in the context of illness and disability.
Yeah. So two guests that we're really excited that are going to be joining us in the coming weeks. Our dear friend Mitchell Tepper from Atlanta, who's a renowned expert in sexuality and disability. And he'll be talking about a new documentary that he and our friend Mark Schoen have recently completed. The title has just flown right out of my head, but we'll talk about it in a week or two on returning
veterans
vets,
in particular.
Iraqi and Afghanistan vets, and dealing with injury and disability. And I also want to, we're going to be welcoming Stephanie Bueller and talking about sex and pregnancy and her new book, Counseling Couples Before, During, and After Pregnancy. But in the meantime, feel free to shoot us an email on the Facebook page for Sex Talk with Dr. Richard Siegal, and we will be back here next Monday at 9 o'clock to continue the conversation. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Great night.
You've been listening to Sex Talk with Dr. Richard Siegal.